This is A Few Good Fights. I'm your host Rob Bannon and I'm joined as always by Sean Taylor.
Hello. I don't know what I'm doing.
I know,
man.
yeah,
This-
fuck it.
I need to find something.
Don't mind us because we're going to be joined by the great Chuck Mindenhall from The Athletic. If you haven't subscribed to The Athletic and you don't know who Chuck Mindenhall is, he was with MMA Fighting, now he's with The Athletic and he's brilliant. We're going to talk everything and all. Conor McGregor, Donald Cerrone, what's next for Conor after UFC 246, shoulder attacks, what people want, and then at the end we're going to answer your questions. But let's jump straight into it. Let's get Chuck on. We're now joined by Chuck Mindenhall of The Athletic, the best writer in the game. Chuck, how's things? How was your weekend?
Oh, it was great, man. I don't know if you guys knew this, but I went to the fights out in Vegas. Not to brag.
Not to brag. Unbelievable. Did I remember I was listening to the Athletic podcast, The Man and the Myth, and I believe you and Sean were talking about how one of the McGregor fights you end up going out drinking with a lot of Irish fans and they were just buying you around. Did that happen this time?
No, it didn't happen this time. In that way, it was different. It was a little different. Have you ever been at one of the Vegas events for a McGregor fight yet?
I went to the Aldo fight.
Okay, because that's the one that was I was talking to Sean about when that whole thing went down. That type of pandemonium felt solely Irish. Like that felt like an Irish explosion, and Vegas was just the the party grounds for that sort of thing. This particular one, it felt more like a traditional like crowd, right? Like I felt like a lot of people were holding parlays and gambling, and the expensive people were out. There was a huge celebrity frolic up in the front row where Dana was sitting. So it was more in that vein, and it was very subdued in terms of the lead up. I thought that you started to feel like it was the McGregor magnitude on his walkout. His music starts to play, all that, but it really only kicked in when he won. I felt like that moment when it all just shifted back into gear was when he peeled off of Cerrone and just had his arms raised. I felt like in that moment, like I looked around the building very quickly, and even though it wasn't like the sea of green like it's been in the past, it was pandemonium. Like people had been pent up and not, maybe just pent up and not ready to root for him like that again or whatever it was. But it all came out in that moment. So it was very similar in that sense. It just was it was more of a varied crowd this time.
Did it seem like much of an Irish crowd that travelled this time around? Because I know Petey was talking about it on the podcast and obviously through the week, and he thought that was more so a lot of Irish Americans there supporting Conor rather than actual, natives from the country.
That's the way it seemed to me too, man. And I've said this a lot in the McGregor fights. It's a lot of fun because there's I'll meet a ton of Irish people who just read the articles or whatever. I didn't have any of that this time. It felt to me just more like you just mentioned. I think that there was an Irish sentiment, but it was more of the Irish Americans. That's what it seemed to me. Not that I did look around and there were pockets where it looked like there were a little, maybe 4 people here, 8 people over here, but there weren't the big sections full of the Irish this time. So a few people definitely made the trek, obviously, but it didn't feel like normal. It felt like you just mentioned, like maybe some people who grew up in Boston or something, you know what I mean, and had some money and were there.
Yeah. Do you feel like throughout the fight week, because I think that was one of the big storylines going in, like will the Irish support Conor? Will they go and watch him? But it was also like what Conor will show up in terms of like the media and then the fight. Do you think how he handled himself outside the cage and then of course the performance, which you can slice whatever way you want. It was an incredible performance. Do you think that that's going to play in to the next fight and maybe it will bring some of that crowd back?
Yeah. I think that's the big question, man. And it really depends, I think. What's funny, man? He's such a big picture guy. I believe him when he says circumstantially is how he'll react. So this particular one was very subdued to the point where it just seemed weird. Like it didn't seem like a Conor McGregor fight week in the sense that he wasn't the bombastic, audacious guy up there in some changing form, we're weaving this guy into some kind of mental state or trying to win the psychological warfare. It was none of that. I know some people were thinking that it was more of a subtle approach to the psychological warfare. I didn't really see that, but I'd be interested to know to what extent he will come out of this next one. Because if we just have a subdued Conor McGregor, it would feel like a totally different experience at some point. You know what I mean? I think that there's something about his audacity that translates. But it's good that he's being gradual with it.
Yeah.
If he's starting to ladle it out and it's coming in, it's going to come back slowly or something like that, I'm totally fine with it, because obviously, man, he had some psychological hurdles to go through. He still has some legal issues. Obviously, he's got a lot going on. I thought this approach, in the end, when I really look back on it, I thought this approach was pretty good.
Yeah, and that's it's a weird one, because I think there was a lot of people who maybe not became fans again, but appreciated his approach this time around, because they're almost tired of the pompous approach that he took before. But next time around, if he does that again, I wonder if people will start saying, oh, I kind of miss, the old, audacity type guy.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that will happen.
Yeah.
I think that will happen, especially, like, let's say he is fighting a guy like Masvidal, who just right now commands a certain kind, I don't know, like, he's got a different kind of charisma. He also commands a room. I think that you would want to see that psychological warfare in play, and I think that Conor is a master at that. I think the only time it really went off the rails, truly went off the rails, was the Nurmagomedov fight, right? Like, I feel like all the rest of them was very calculated madness. Like, he knew what he was doing. He knew how far to push things. And he was totally willing to push that threshold and keep expanding it. But I think the Nurmagomedov one got a little dark, so this was a nice counterbalance to that. But if he didn't return in some form to trying to carve up his guy mentally before a fight, especially a guy like Masvidal, who right now feels invincible and like he's got the world as his oyster and all that stuff, I would feel a little disappointed personally, and I think that would be kind of the collective feel on whole. I think that we'd want to see him return in some form to that guy that he was.
Yeah, and for those who are listening who don't subscribe to The Athletic, Chuck done a great article, a great column about why you think Masvidal should be next. And I think it was a weird one, because it seemed like the sentiment around the crowd, sentiment among everybody was Masvidal should be next. And then Dana White comes out at the press conference and says, no, it's going to be Khabib. And it's like he threw a spanner in the works. I think you talked about Floyd as well, and I thought it was a great line that you said, where it was like that it was the fuzz coming in to break up the party. It was like Dana White's comments about them.
Did you see Bob Arum's comments?
No.
Have you seen?
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, Jesus. Bob Arum.
Oh, Terence Crawford.
Bob Arum said today he wants to make Conor McGregor and Terence Crawford. And he wants to do a two-way deal with boxing and MMA, because Crawford has a background in wrestling, which is genuinely the worst thing I've ever read in my life.
Yeah.
Here's the problem, man. Like, so we went on this joyride with Conor once, right? And I think that it feels like a one-night stand. It feels like this weird sort of, like, I don't know how to feel about it. It feels excessive. You went on him on this ride. He did not win the fight, but it was a fun experience, but it's not something you really want to relive, because it felt ultimately like a detour. And in retrospect, we've been able to see the kind of detriment it caused for MMA. We basically lose Conor on whole for this amount of time, because he made so much money, all this stuff, like however you want to slice it. But I just feel like we got back from that detour.
Yeah. And
I feel like things are just trying to restore to some kind of normal idea of his true essence as an MMA guy, and just returning to understanding Conor and his brilliance and all that stuff. There's nothing that wants to destroy that faster than talking about boxing again. I mean, to me, that's, or even a guy coming over from boxing, which makes even less sense, because that's the beauty and the brilliance of the UFC, is you have these inherent monsters that are built into the system, ready to fight a guy like that already have been marketed properly and everything else. There's no reason to connect dots from the boxing world to Conor McGregor. It feels like a continued digression, and I want nothing to do with it. When I heard Floyd Mayweather's name, man, I slapped my forehead essentially, and I felt like everybody did. There was a collective groan in the media in the press conference. I'm like, oh my God, not this again. This is crazy. He's like a stalker, let MMA be, man. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's a complete buzzkill at this point to even mention Floyd Mayweather's name. If he wants to do that again after a while, and things have played out, and we've kind of gotten MMA, he's back into the world of MMA kind of full time and all that, go for it. But right now, I'm just like, dude, you're talking about your season. Let's play out the season. And I feel like it's not even him. It's Conor. I mean, it's Dana White. So I'm like,
Floyd has pushed it a little bit.
Dana right there is just seeing the money or something.
Floyd has pushed it on his Instagram as well.
Yeah, he posted it immediately after.
Floyd's probably getting to that part again where he needs another payday so he can keep the lifestyle 100%. Up. So.
But it's like one of those things, I thought, the Mayweather fight, when you look at it, like, I don't care what anybody says, at the time, a lot of people that I saw that are now bagging on it and saying it was terrible, they were enjoying it for what it was. For me, it's like a terrible childhood movie that you watch, that you have great memories of at the time, but you don't want to go back and revisit it because it's going to ruin everything. And I think that's what's happening here.
That's 100% correct. It was fun in a very intoxicated way. It was like, why not?
Yeah.
I think that the novelty of it was the whole thing. It was the novelty of seeing a guy at the top of the MMA world fight a guy who was undefeated in boxing and had that sort of star power in the boxing world, put them together and see what happens. Now, we saw what happened. So what did you lose? You lost the vital part of it, which is the novelty. Now it's just a repeat. And like, who wants a sequel to that? Nobody should want the sequel to that, because that wasn't where the essence lied to the whole thing. It was just going through with it once that mattered.
Yeah. Yeah, it's insane. We know that you want Jorge Masvidal next for Conor. Why is that? Why is that the right fight?
You know, man, I just think that you're never... Okay, so I'm one of those guys who, when you look at the whole picture, you say who right now translates the best. And if you're trying to, like, my perspective is Conor doesn't deserve probably Nurmagomedov yet. You know, it's a 155-pound title, but he just regained some of the mojo that was maybe lost or compromised or pent up or, you know, wherever, put in purgatory. He's got that back. Jorge Masvidal is at the very height of his game. Like, I don't think he will ever get higher than he is right now. So who's worthy of basically colliding in this type of situation? I think that these two guys, you put it together and you're thinking only from a very big fight standpoint, I think you can't get bigger than that one right now. I just think that those two guys, you may miss the boat on the Masvidal thing if he goes and fights Usman, because let's face it, man, that's a fight he could lose, right? That's a fight that I think a lot of people would pick Usman to win. And it gets compromised. I think that his newfound sort of fame and like celebrity within this game and his persona, everything that's playing into it is perfect to put him against the other guy who basically has that from a different perspective. So I'm like, put those guys together and make it happen. Conor likes 170 pounds. I know that Masvidal's big, but I feel like Dana's just kind of throwing that. He's too big for Conor stuff because it's reverse psychology. I think he actually really wants to sell the fight, so he's selling reluctance. He's selling like his own reluctance as like the thing we have to get over to get the fight, and that's all fine and good. I hope that's the case. But I just think those two guys right now where they are, and plus when you look at the other guys kind of around who have a chance, the only other one that I would kind of put in that range would be maybe Justin Gaethje, right? Like he's another guy who I think could be a big fight. But if you're just talking about where they are, star power, and the kind of doubt that would go into the outcome, I think that Masvidal versus McGregor is the biggest one.
Me too. And I think as well for Conor at this point, the way he's talking about this whole season thing, being consistent, and it's like he's trying to roll back. I think he's trying to win the admiration of fans now because of what happened. And I think a fight with Masvidal would be the best one for him to continue to win them fans back, because if he's going to go down and fight Khabib, there's going to be a huge portion of the crowd that's like, come on, what's that all about? He just won one fight. And then if there's people, if he fights Justin Gaethje, which would be cool, and I think people would get that, but then John Kavanagh is asking for it at 170 for some reason, which makes no sense.
Insane.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
So like, I think the Jorge Masvidal one, a lot of people would be on board for that, because they're both in a similar position where they can fight whoever they want, and it's a tough matchup.
I also think that, you know, I've talked about this a billion times. I'm sure I've talked to you guys about it, but there was always a sense of escalation to what Conor McGregor is doing. I feel like the Cowboy Cerrone one was like a return to ground zero. I feel like Masvidal, though, kind of puts him back into that rarefied space where he's trying for things that are, you know, bizarre and different and maybe bigger than he should be shooting for, that type of thing. Because I don't care about the BMF belt, but I mean, obviously that if that's in play, the bigger the better. But the fact that Dana has basically planted the seed that Conor's too small for this fight and everything else, there'd be the proper amount of doubt and overcoming, the sense of overcoming and triumph and all that. I feel like that would be in play for sure, man. I think it stays in tune with who he is as a fighter and as a human being, and like his sense of like bigger and bigger and bigger. I just think that Justin Gaethje saying, "Hey, Justin Gaethje, we want you to come meet us at 170." That's other fighters, man. Other fighters do that stuff, not Conor. Yeah, we had a question from Keegan Irwin that we we're going to ask later, or we're going to answer later on, but I think it applies here as well. So he was talking about how he thinks there's a lot of people who are looking at the Masvidal Conor fight and saying that Masvidal will be a huge favourite, but he thinks it's a lot of recency bias towards that. If Masvidal and Conor fought, how do you think they match up, and do you think that Masvidal should be a huge favourite? Well, okay, so you're right about the reason. I think that's true because Masvidal obviously had a very good 2019. But let's go backwards just a little bit. Who would you have favored if they had fought a couple of years ago? I think Conor McGregor, right? Because he seemed like the more invincible side of this. I just think that we are seeing Masvidal at his very best. But it's also slightly tricky because him knocking out Askren in 5 seconds doesn't tell you a whole lot about what he would have handled in the adversity of that type of fight. I don't know. And I'm not saying Conor will bring that kind of fight to him because obviously he would not. He's not going to wrestle him. But I do think we have seen in the course of time Masvidal get beat up on the feet too. It's not like this is it's not like he's always shown that he's susceptible to the ground, but his stand-up is second to none. I do think that Conor McGregor's stand-up is that good. And so you get into a little bit of like, the recency bias, I think, plays a big deal. But I do think that the line probably closed up a little bit if that perception is out there by seeing a 40-second, annihilation of Cowboy Cerrone. Now, you could say what you want about Cerrone, but that's still impressive no matter how you slice it, man. And we've seen Conor do that in big moments. I just think that I think it would be closer than the line would indicate right now. Let's put it that way. I would feel like it's a closer fight. And I'm talking Sean El Shadi, my guy on Man in the Myth. He's all about Masvidal and some of these. But it's funny how attitudes change as you get into fight week, and I feel like that's part of that psychological warfare that Conor not just wages against his opponent, but he puts out there for the general public to sort of say, like, you know what, man, he may win this, and it feels like he has the ability to kind of turn favor like that. So I think it would be close in the end, man. I really do. I think it's if they match up, I think by the time we get there, we won't know who's going to win. That'll be the fascination of that fight.
I think Conor as well. I think him and his team and the UFC as well, they've done a great job of building that narrative that he wasn't the same guy during the Khabib fight. And they're like, and like to the point where I was like, he wasn't the same guy. Even though like if Khabib and Conor fought, I'd pick Khabib 10 times out of 10.
Right.
But I think they built a brilliant narrative to say, Conor, he's back. He's back. He's training.
Yeah. I think that's smart. That is the smart play. If that's truly the fight he wants, the smart play is to plant it in the general public and just keep repeating it. Let it grow that Conor was not who he is right now. And, hey, man, at some point, I just think that, it would be too soon for him to go against Nurmagomedov next. But if he's able to go through Masvidal, and I know it'd be 170 pounds, but honestly, nobody gets the sense of exceptionalism or like exceptions as Conor McGregor. I would totally understand at that point. If he gets by Masvidal, I would totally understand a scenario where they're like, okay, we think he should be next for Nurmagomedov. That's the fight he wants, and he's proven he's come back. He's won a couple of fights at 170. I wouldn't even dispute it because I'd be like, he's the big draw for the company. It's stupid for them not to look at something like that. And he finally has erased some of the doubts about all that stuff. Plus, you have this narrative of maybe he wasn't in his right space, which people would start to buy on some level, especially the national media. And I think even us, like the people like us, because we did see changes, through his persona over this time. So they could sell it. I just want to see it not happen next. I want to see it happen down the road when it has a chance to get our delusions ripened again and us feel like that could happen, like he might challenge him.
Yeah, completely agree. What was your thoughts? Last thing on Conor, we'll talk a little bit about Cerrone. What was your thoughts when you saw, if you did see it, that Conor moved from, I think, number 4 to number 3 in the lightweight rankings on the UFC's website?
Oh, man, I did not see that.
That's insane.
I don't know, man. I mean, well, it always comes back to the people. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know the people who vote. I look at the people who vote, and I'm like, who are these people? I haven't met these people. I feel like they're these anonymous, like this group of people that meets in the dark. Like, I don't know. But,
there's a thread on Reddit.
I don't place
about
too much stock into it, man.
Yeah, it's really bizarre.
There's a thread on Reddit about the guys who vote and like how involved they actually are in MMA media. And there's a couple of guys who have like these ancient websites that aren't even active anymore who apparently vote as well. It's ridiculous.
Well,
I'll find that article at some point.
Yeah, we'll post it in the comments. But by the way, hilarious. Because it's the media, were like any of you approached, or was it something that you didn't want to be involved in, or anything like that? Because maybe you don't want to. I don't know. But were you approached, or anybody else?
We were approached.
Yeah.
I think I even did it for like the first couple of weeks. Yeah. And I know other guys did too. But there were some conflicts, and I talked to guys like Josh Gross and. Other people kind of put it in the context of why it is a conflict of interest to do that a little bit. And, at some point you're just like, it's true. You shouldn't be you shouldn't be involved in stuff that basically sways business.
Yeah.
Because the rankings are meant to sway business. It's supposed to develop the pecking order, which goes into pay and everything else. So I'm like, I think I was like a lot of other people. It just didn't feel right, and I got out of it pretty early.
Yeah, that makes sense. On Cerrone, I saw a video from Luke Thomas talking about how he doesn't believe that Donald Cerrone is a choker. He just believes that, he's coming up against guys in these really big fights that were simply just better than him. But then there's a lot of people disputing that as well. What's your thoughts on Cerrone's performance? And again, choker is a very broad word. It's hard to define exactly what that means. But do you agree with the narrative that he chokes on the biggest stage, or is it just the opponents he's facing?
I would love to say that it's just for whatever reason there's a line that he hits where these guys he's able to beat everybody except for the 5% or 3% of guys who are just better than him.
Yeah,
that might be true, but come on, man. Like every time he's been in the big fight, I mean the one that will basically steer his legacy into a new direction, either a title or something like this, he has not looked like himself. He just hasn't, man. He just hasn't done it. So I don't know. I hate the word. I hate the idea of choking. It's just like, and that sort of thing. But I know that that's the crude version of what we're basically saying too. Like that's just, he doesn't look like himself. He didn't. I thought the way he comported all week, was very nice. I know some people are like, man, this isn't going to go well for him. Like they were sensing that he was going to do exactly what happened, but I didn't really sense that. I thought this time he seemed ready. He seemed like he was ready to kind of confront it. All he wanted to do was get in there and fight. I thought that press conference, I thought he kind of actually shone better than Conor in a lot of ways because he was revving up the fans a little more and everything else. It's just whatever it is, man. It's like it hasn't mentally translated for him, and it is a mental game too. Like he gets in there and he just doesn't look like himself. Like that wasn't the fight. I mean, and I remember the RDA fight when he was back in Orlando. It's just you're watching one version of Cerrone, and you're thinking the other thing's going to happen, and then it's just compromised once he gets in there. And I don't know what it is, but I hate the word choker, but I think I agree with that. If you want to be crude, that's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, it's a really weird one. Like even in WEC when he fought for titles, similar thing. He just didn't show up. So it is a very strange thing. And I'm pretty sure he fought like guys say like further down the card, maybe it wasn't as important and looked way better. So I can definitely understand that.
Psychologically, I think he thrives if there's a fight, like especially if he doesn't know much about the fighter, or it's just thrown at him, or it goes under the radar. These are all conditions he likes. He likes the kind of like, why not? Let's just do it without thinking about it. Let's do it without thinking about it. Let's just be spontaneous and get in there and fight. It's just a fight. He's able to maintain that on certain fights. Like he can take short notice. Perfect for his mentality because he doesn't have to overthink it. I think fights like this and fights that have so much import and so much media and so much hype and so much ESPN was all over this thing. It's a bad formula for him. Whatever reason, it's a bad formula for him.
Yeah. I'm not sure who this was, but somebody said that they think he had a mental, or maybe his mentality was wrong right from the get-go. Because remember a few years ago, he used to say, I'm not really interested in winning titles. I just want to make money, have good fights. I think that eventually it changed and he started chasing titles. But for a long period of his career, he was just talking about, I want to have great fights. The title doesn't really matter. Do you think maybe that had an effect on it? Maybe like having that mentality for so long?
It's hard to say, man, because at some point we've dealt with so many versions of Cerrone too. Like, you know what I mean? Like where it feels like he's had 33 fights. I feel like we've written about him and talked about him through all 33 in slightly evolving ways. And he becomes a father. He resurrects himself. He goes to welterweight. He resurrects himself. He has these moments where he kind of plunges a little bit and then he comes back. I don't know, man. And remember, his grandma at one point was like sick, and that was right around that RDA thing. Like, I feel like he kind of publicly has variations of himself where he presents himself like, "Hey, man, I'll fight anybody." That aren't always like he will fight anybody, but it's not always rosy, in terms of how he's thinking of it. It's just weird, man. Yeah. I don't know. Something in his mind, though. I will say this I would say this definitively. Like there is a way that he approaches fights, certain fights, that works for him much better than others. In his mind of minds, I hope that he figures out, like, if he's going to keep going, which it sounds like he is, the exact mentality that he should bring in there, because he's done it long enough, and we've seen him look so good against guys that we think he might lose against, bigger guys, more talented guys, things like that, and he ends up winning. Whatever he's bringing into there, that's what he needs to do, regardless of the size of fight. But unfortunately for him, man, I think that this might have been the biggest fight he'll ever get. I don't think he's going to get. I think that his days of the title and all that are over anyway. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think so too. Shifting gears a little bit, Henry Cejudo and Jose Aldo, I think, was made official for UFC 250. Aldo, of course, coming off a loss in his bantamweight debut. You also have Adesanya and Romero, and these, which again, Romero's coming off his loss as well.
Yeah.
This all kind of leads into the whole meritocracy thing and talking about Conor and all moving around there. What's your thoughts on these two fights, and is there a difference between them in your mind?
Okay, so there's definitely a difference in terms of all of this. Like, so if you're talking about McGregor, for instance, we talked like you could say like because he is such a needle mover, you could make the case that like if the UFC decided tomorrow to pull, I mean, it would be criticized, but you could make the rematch with Nurmagomedov based on his legacy of star power and drawing power and everything else. You could understand that from a company decision. The middleweight one, in terms of, Adesanya fighting Romero, makes complete sense because there weren't a lot of... It was conditional to the point where there weren't a lot of guys. Like Paulo Costa obviously is not ready. And Romero fought him very tooth and nail. It was kind of a coin flip. And you're sort of saying, well, okay, he can't go. Can you go? You were the next best thing. And I still think that Romero adds a lot of doubt and has the meritocracy, even if he's coming off the loss, right? Like, I feel like he has all that. The weird one is the Aldo one, and I feel like we're playing off of his legacy that doesn't make sense to the division he's in, and it doesn't make sense to the collective feel of what's happening in that fight. Like, Cejudo kept two divisions basically held hostage for a few months there while he was deciding what he was going to do. And to end up at Jose Aldo is very puzzling because I don't think he was in there. He wasn't in the conversation. Plus, he's had one fight so far at bantamweight. Granted, he made it, but it never felt good, right? Like, it never felt good. It felt like this very negative experiment that was going on. And he loses the fight, and so he's still going to get it. I don't really like the idea of him being thrust in there based on whatever reasons they're giving. Especially when you have guys like Peter Yan, and I was talking to Sean about this a little bit, like Peter Yan, who basically showcased against Uriah Faber. Like, why have that happen at all if he's not next? Or Aljamain Sterling, who I know has been on the shelf a little bit, but he's there too. Meritocracy, if we're talking that, there are guys who could be fighting and it would make complete sense. Whereas Jose Aldo doesn't. That one to me feels more left field than the rest of them.
Yeah, and not only is he coming off a loss at bantamweight, but his loss before that at featherweight was there as well. Like, he's on a 2-fight losing streak, and
bizarre.
And bantamweight is absolutely stacked. It's like you have Marlon Moraes who beat Jose Aldo. I know they probably don't want to run that one back because Henry Cejudo did beat him before, but then Aljo, Yan, Sandhagen even, who was, it was pulled from his fight against Frankie Edgar a while back as well, so I'm sure he's upset. And even the likes of, fellow Brazilians and Assunção, who's been fighting in that division for so long and just could not get a title fight. It's crazy. It's a really weird one.
It's just bad because I'm like, when you really just look at it and you step back and you think, well, Aldo, when is that fight supposed to happen?
UFC 250. I'm not sure what the date is, so...
Well, anyway, Cejudo, whoever wins, let's just say Cejudo wins the fight. Like, you then have Cejudo basically on the shelf, out of range for all the guys you just mentioned until later in the year. Like, it's just it holds everything up for no good reason, and I'm not a fan of that, man.
Yeah, no, it's bizarre.
Aldo probably needs until UFC 250 to make the weight.
Probably, yeah. He's probably recovering from that weight cut. Although I will say,
sad truth.
Yeah, I will say he did look good against Marlon Moraes, but not physically, but in the actual fight. But yeah. Did you see Anthony Rumble Johnson posted a tweet to UFC 248? It was TBD against TBD, and he's like essentially, saying, is he coming back for UFC 248? Would you like to see Rumble back?
I mean, I guess so, but I guess what I like is that now where's he at? Because he looked like he was north of 265 the last I saw him. Like,
he said he got up as high as 285.
I don't follow him on Instagram. Is he looking like he's in shape?
Yeah, apparently Sean said that he got up to 285. That's what he said. I think he's lower than that now. But yeah,
he says he's lower than that now. But he said the highest he got while he's been off is 285. He said, I think at the time he said he was around 250-ish.
Oh, at the time,
yeah.
So
Wow.
still 250.
Well, man, let's put it this way: the dude was always a thumper. He could go in there and trade, and he carried tremendous power. He compromised his power a little bit by cutting all that weight early on, the welterweight, which is just ridiculous to even contemplate anymore, and even middleweight. I'm kind of intrigued. There were some fights like the John Jones fight, which never happened. But let's say that John Jones does eventually, maybe this year, make that leap to heavyweight. I still would like to see that fight. I know that it probably wouldn't benefit Anthony Jones, but you never know. Yeah. That kind of power, I still think that he has some of the heaviest hands in all of fighting. So I'm. On that level, man, I'm like, there are some guys right now in that heavyweight division, which just all of them, there's so many guys carrying that kind of power that I'm like, yeah, you could, adding one more guy to that mix, Cyril Gons and all, like, Ngannou and Derek Lewis and, Rosenstrike, all these guys, like all of a sudden you add Anthony Johnson to that, man, it only adds to the sweet variation of what you might see in there.
Yeah, and his retirement wasn't like a lot of the ones we see. It wasn't, I guess, that he took too much damage or anything like that. It seemed like he was just mentally checked out. He lost to Daniel Cormier by choke in a title fight. So, like, him coming back, I'm not like, eesh, you took too much damage. It's just like, are you mentally, ready to go, essentially? That's probably the question that you have to have.
Yeah, and I think it's better suited for him to fight these guys at heavyweight. So it's not that these guys wouldn't test his cardio or his willpower, but there's a lot of one-shot, knockout type things going on that are, that I feel like he's more tailored to. I felt like in that Daniel Cormier, you're right. The indications were in the lead up, and when you watched the fight, how it all played out, it just seemed like he was not interested in that fight at all. So hopefully, man, if he gets remotivated and he wants to get in there and do some damage, that's the guy to do it, man. So I do hope that besides the physical, I hope his mental standpoint is he's ready to get in there and do that thing.
Yeah. Quick one before we let you go. There's a fight this weekend, and I always find it weird when you have it's a fine fight. It's Curtis Blaydes and Dos Santos fighting a heavyweight, and big fight for Blaydes.
I actually forgot that was on. Great promotion by the UFC, yeah.
But I think it's really weird after a huge fight, especially for people who travel like yourself, Chuck, coming back from Vegas, and then you have like a fight night, which is, it's all right. But what's your thoughts on the fight itself? And do you favour anybody going into this one?
Man, you're absolutely right about the fights when these little fight cards that happen after a big event. They just feel like such throwaways. But it's a good fight. Like, it's so strange to me that that he's still around. Like, I was thinking about that. Like, 12 years this guy's been around. He has taken some damage, but every time you kind of think he's not going to be there, he shows up again. I know he just lost to Ngannou, and then so did Curtis Blaydes. Like, he's beat everybody but Ngannou. But I'm like, it's one of those situations where you're like, all right, well, it's good matchmaking in the sense, like, where would these guys go? I still think I think Curtis Blaydes is an asset. Like, if he's able to go in there and beat a guy like those, what is his name? Dos Santos. I was about to say Dos Santos. Dos Santos. If he's able to beat Dos Santos, it's a nice marker for him. And I think that Dos Santos, as crazy as it sounds, falls into that role a little bit. Where it's like he becomes the name for the younger guys or these guys coming up to try to beat and make their own names and get to the title shot. But he is still right there. If he wins this fight, it's crazy as it sounds, 35 years old, all those fights in the UFC all the way back to 2008. He's still hovering in there, and I think he'd be like a fight away from maybe showing up again. So it definitely has some ramifications, but I think it has bigger meaning for Blaydes. You know what I mean? So it could be a big moment for him.
Yeah, like Blaydes is 28. I always forget how young he is. It's insane. So I think he has plenty. And like, he's only lost to Ngannou twice. So
that's a baby in the heavyweight division.
An absolute
That's pretty
baby.
forgivable.
Yeah, pretty forgivable. But yeah, let's not get too much into that. Chuck, thanks for joining us again. It's been a month or so, maybe a month and a half. But thanks for joining us. We might get you in a month again, if possible.
I hope so, guys. I'm going to hold you to that.
Sweet.
Thanks,
nice one, man. All the best.
All right, thanks so much.
Cheers.
Take care.
So thanks, Chuck. Now on to your questions, fan questions. If you're watching from here now, you haven't watched Chuck, I asked somebody's question to Chuck, so go back and watch that.
It was a good question.
It was a good question. It was a quality question.
thinker.
That's why we kept it for Chuck, you know. Bjorn Downs, this was on Facebook, asked, essentially, you can see it on screen if you want to read the whole thing, but he's asking if Costa versus Cannonier is potentially the next fight to make for both guys. And also, if possible, could Till fight Anderson Silva at UFC 250 for a retirement match for Silva? What's your thoughts on, I guess, the first one, and then we can go to the second one?
Cannonier and Costa. A fight I'd have no problem watching. Would like to see it. Costa doesn't sound like he's ready to go. Yeah, by all accounts.
Yeah, so he needed surgery. He had surgery, and I think he's training like a madman after surgery because Dana White said slow down. But he is training. So UFC 248 was the one that Cannonier was supposed to fight Robert Whittaker, right?
Whittaker's now out.
Now Whittaker's out. Did you see what potentially it might be?
Yeah.
It's an unconfirmed rumor.
I don't really
now.
want to talk about it too much because I know Whittaker. Dana even said through Whittaker that he doesn't really want to talk about it. So
but it wouldn't surprise me, or something similar, because did you see Dana his interview? And he was getting really emotional. And of course, if you know what the thing was, check it out on our Facebook page. But yeah, I'd be fine with that fight if that's the fight to make. Yeah, so that's really fun. Two big punchers. Good test. And then Till versus Anderson Silva at 250. Don't like it.
That's not a fight I have much interest in seeing, to be honest.
I don't like that for Anderson.
I don't like
it for both either.
I don't think that fight does anything for, like, Gastelum was a far bigger name on Till's record than Anderson would be at the minute. I know it's Anderson Silva.
Yeah.
I don't think the win does much for Till.
Yeah.
I think he has much more to lose in that fight.
And I think, you know, Anderson going up against a guy like Till.
Give Anderson a W if he's going to retire.
Give him a W. Give him another old guy. Sorry, Anderson, I don't want to call you an old guy, but you know what I mean. Yeah, I don't like that fight, but yeah, thanks for the question.
Yeah.
Let's go off that little... Yep, there you go.
There we go.
Linus. Let's jump into this. What do people mean, even fighters like Uriah Hall, didn't see this, when they say McGregor Cerrone was a fixed fight, the whole fight was planned, or Cowboy took a dive? Is there another way they mean fixed? It makes no sense to me. What's your thoughts, Sean? I have an opinion on this, but what's your thoughts?
When they say it was a fixed fight, bullshit. Bullshit. Do you even know what a fixed fight looks like? You don't. Who does?
Well, someone in Pride. We seen them, and they didn't look anything like that.
Was this fight? No, it wasn't. I struggle to believe Donald Cerrone is a man to take a dive in a fight of all people.
No.
Yeah, so I think Uriah Hall talking through his arse.
Brown.
Yeah. No, I don't buy it at all.
I didn't see Uriah Hall say that, but the only thing I'm thinking of, right, and I understand what they're talking about, doesn't mean it's fixed, but maybe there's some people saying it was fixed because it was a really favourable matchup for Conor. So it was in the sense it was like, it was a tee up. It was, I think that's what Nate Diaz was getting at.
Said it, well, like we said it before, it was the closest you'll get to a tune up in UFC.
Yeah. So I think for some people, maybe when they say fixed, they mean that. I disagree with it, obviously. I think
if you're going to use favourable matchmaking.
Yeah, exactly. It's different. But I think that might be what people are talking about. But then he talks about, you know, fixed fights in Japan and stuff. And yeah, there was fixed fights in Japan. Mark Coleman was involved in a fixed fight in Japan. Check that one out. But yeah, I don't think the rest of them are questions. We can move on.
Yeah, it's just why he doesn't think... Linus agrees it's not a fixed fight. You're right, he's talking Brown because he couldn't get a payday.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. Aiden Mack, was Cerrone really up for this fight? We'll start with that one. Do you think he was up for this one, Sean? We spoke about it with Chuck there.
I don't think he was up for it any more than he would be for any other fight, if you know what I mean. I think he was just... It's a fight to him. Yeah, and I don't know. I never really got the sense in fight week that he was any more pumped up than normal. Yeah,
or not motivated, or...
Yeah, no, I don't think he wasn't motivated. I just don't think he was any more so than normal or any less so. I just think he was as he was normal.
He was Cowboy.
Yeah. That's what I think.
There was... I was watching something or listening to something, and they said that they thought that when he was coming to the cage, he looked off. But I just think that's a bit, you know...
I think that's a bit flaky, that. I struggled to... when
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I know when people talk about this, he's bouncing up and down when he's running to the cage. I don't really buy into that. Like, he looks nervous. What does nervous look like? He's about to go into a fight.
Yeah. And we know Cerrone does be nervous. He admits it.
He says he is. He says it's the biggest buzz of his life. So I don't.
He jumps off mountains and shit.
Yeah. You know? I don't really buy into it. I think that's a bit flaky.
Yeah. Will pending court case issues scupper McGregor's run? Can't really talk about that too much, but maybe.
Potentially.
Maybe. Who knows?
Potentially.
It's definitely something I was thinking about going into this one. You know,
visa
issues and all that kind of stuff, but. Yeah, we'll see. While he's not hot,
While he's hot.
While he's hot, is the next best time to pitch him against Masvidal? I guess he's talking about McGregor. Yeah, so while he's hot is the next best pitch against Masvidal. Yes, I think so. I butchered that, but yes, I think
you did. While he's hot is next fight, basically the best time to pitch him against Masvidal.
Yeah, there was missing words there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is.
I agree.
Strike while they're on
spoke
top.
about it with Chuck in length. Go back and check that one out. Next up. Fergal Francis, great Irish name. What are the danger limitations on pairing fighters who are mismatched? And is the discouragement of such pairings enforceable? So, like, I guess it's kind of in relation to the McGregor-Cerrone fight. Maybe he thinks it was a mismatch, or maybe it's just, that brought up the idea of mismatches. And we do see a lot of mismatches, especially in boxing, but also in MMA. And I thought that the goal, or one of the goals and one of the functions of the Athletic Commission is to stop this kind of carry on. I'm not calling them McGregor-Cerrone one. They're both ranked. That was a fun, that was a fair fight. But we do see mismatches, and it's really up to the Athletic Commission to stop that kind of thing.
I think people will probably be surprised at the number of bin men who get turned down as opponents for boxers. Yeah. Because the commissions or the boxing boards will say he's not, that's not a fair matchup. And even then, the guys who do get accepted, it's a bit like, Jesus. Yeah. So
it's like on the edge. It's like, what can we get away with?
It's like you might not like the commissions or the fact that they're accepting fights. I probably don't like a lot of the matchups that they get away with matching. But that's their job. I don't know. Yeah, like the perfect example is Conor versus Floyd. Like, there's no way in a million years that an Athletic Commission can actually sanction that. Like, when you actually think about it. Yeah. But, what you say, money talks and bullshit walks. Yeah, money talks and bullshit walks.
Essentially.
I think
there is one example in MMA, though. I don't know if you remember it. Do you remember when Habib and Tony were supposed to fight? One of the times.
Paul
Felder wanted to fight, and the New York Commission said he wasn't ranked high enough. But that was a bizarre one. That
was a silly one, I thought.
Yeah, there's been way bigger mismatches than that one. Although it was a mismatch.
But then arguably everyone's a mismatch against Khabib. So it's like, where do you go to? What was I going to say? Sorry. The thing is, if you stop these outrageous mismatches in boxing, you probably eliminate 75% of every card. At least. And
you'll have boxers who are like 7-7 fighting for titles because they can't fight bin men.
Yeah, as in you end up getting, what do you do with it? Yeah. As in, I think
it's part of the game, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Like, you don't have to like it. I don't think there's it's not changing anytime soon, put it like that.
No. So I think it's like anything, it's what they can get away with. They push the limits as far as they can. Naushad Ahmed asked, how realistic is Dana White's claim that Conor Habib rematch can rival Floyd versus Conor numbers? Seems hyperbolic, as a lot of things Dana says. We can get the next one next.
How realistic is that? What did Conor and Floyd do?
I don't know. I'll check it now.
I know it's the second most bought pay-per-view ever.
What was number one? KSI, was it?
Pacquiao and Floyd and Pacquiao, wasn't it? Yeah, I think so, does it? No, it doesn't. I don't think so. And I think it's hard to judge even because of the ESPN deal. We don't know what we're looking at with regards to
Conor Khabib, sorry.
I don't think Conor Khabib does close to that. I don't think people have much interest in the rematch right now. Maybe in a fight down the line.
See, I do disagree with that one now. I'll tell you why.
Because how it'll be sold.
Yeah, I just think they can sell it very well. I can't find it. I think it is up there. The one you said.
2.9 maybe? Is that what it is?
Yeah, probably. It done really well. Yeah. I wouldn't be absolutely shocked. I don't think so. I really don't think so. But I wouldn't be absolutely shocked. Just because of how people love crazy. Normal people, they love crazy.
Maybe if Conor beats Masvidal and then fights Khabib.
Yeah, possibly. I don't think it would, but possibly. Do you guys think that the UFC/Dana would put their foot down to ensure it doesn't get as toxic as last time, or let it unfold as that will lead to bigger pay-per-view numbers? I think the UFC will. Maybe they might say to them, let's not smash windows and stuff, but I can't really see them saying, don't be talking shit, because they saw what numbers are done originally, and that's what this fight is.
Dane is a salesman at the end of the day, so
he is.
He might say they're not getting within touch and distance of each other at a press conference, but I mean, Conor wasn't within touch and distance of him when he threw a dolly through the bus. So.
Yeah. I also don't think that it would get as toxic this time around. I think Conor knows at this point that he's on a bit of a tightrope, knife edge type job. But yeah. Brian Moore, is Ireland slowly starting to support McGregor again?
Watch our video on this.
Yeah, watch the video on this. I think there's there is fans out there that maybe were afraid to say they liked Conor, who now say that they support him. I mean MMA fans, because he got a win, and it's kind of almost pushing some of the bad stuff under the rug for now. But I didn't see anything like what I'd normally see for McGregor fights in terms of casual fans.
I think there's sort of two answers to this question. So is Ireland as a nation starting to support McGregor? And no, I don't think so. No. And then are the MMA fans? I mean, for me, he's Irish. I don't want to see him. I want to see him win, like, but I ain't emotionally invested in him. If you know what I mean. So that's how I feel about it.
I think that's the right answer, Sean.
Thanks.
Linus again. Conor's obsessed with UFC records and being on the top dog. With that said, how has no one, even Jorge, commented on the fact that it looked like Conor was trying to take Masvidal's 5-second record with that opening left hand? We'll leave it there. He was talking with the left hand down there. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think
a big one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He won it.
I think I did hear a couple of people mention. I know Ariel when he was talking to Bisping. Was it Bisping? No, I can't remember who he was talking to. Probably actually Jorge, saying, do you think Conor was trying to break your record? And to be honest, I would not be surprised. He is obsessed with breaking records, and he, like, if that was a wrestler, I'd be like, that was the worst start to a fight for any striker like Conor ever. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that was in his mind.
Yeah, I actually hadn't seen that take anyway. But like when you hear him talking about the record about getting KOs or TKOs and stuff, it wouldn't. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, because it's plausible anyway. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's like it's a good opponent, slow starter to actually do it against. So yeah, good take. Conor Jordan, next potential matchup for Paulo Costa. Is Costa versus Till the fight to make, or perhaps the winner of Whittaker versus Cannonier? So Whittaker is out, so it won't be that one. Could be Cannonier. What's the fight?
My opinion on the middleweight division is a bit murky right now.
It's murky, isn't it?
I can't really play matchmaker in that division because we said it off air. Like, Romero is literally the only guy you can give to.
I know.
Adesanya right now because Till is injured. We've just found out. Costa is, fuck knows when he's ready to go. Cannonier is there, but probably needs another win or two before getting that to Adesanya.
Yeah, you have Jack Hermanson there.
Hermanson's there, so like, I don't know. Romero was the only guy. I'm not playing matchmaker in that division right now. It's a bit messy.
I think them guys like Costa, Till, Cannonier,
they're the guys who are all.
Yeah, they're in. Yeah. Unfortunately, Whittaker is out, and it looks like he won't be fighting for a while, so you can't really match them up perfectly. But yeah, maybe Costa, Till. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the fight.
Yeah, me neither. Zabrem, was this the best usage of shoulder strikes you've ever seen? John Jones used them in several fights, but not as effective. Are people underestimating or understanding the greatness of these shots by McGregor?
Understating the greatness.
Understating, Jesus Christ.
English good.
Oh my God. Yeah, the best usage. I think it was like the fact that it led to the ending of the fight is why people are really.
It's been the most effective use.
I think so. But I did see one with, who was it? Frank Camacho, I think, used them quite effectively up against the cage. Bam. And then also John Jones, as he said, particularly in a fight against Glover Teixeira, he used them and actually didn't rock him, but he hurt him a little bit. So yeah, and yeah, they were really good. It's just funny that like when something kind of new happens, a lot of people jump on board and say it was the most. Like, I have heard so many people talking about these shoulders this week, and like I understand the question, but like it's crazy how many people are talking about it. It's crazy, but yeah.
His shoulders, they're nice shoulders to be fair.
They were nice shoulders.
Yeah.
Understating.
Is that us, Rob?
Is that it on that? There was a few questions today. I'll ask you them, Sean. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Here's a weird one that I'm not sure where it comes from, but Adrian Kapor says, love the show, boys. Just wanted your thoughts on a Conor versus RDA at 170 if he wins this weekend over Chiesa. Maybe headlining UFC 250 in Brazil. That's really left field, isn't it?
It is. Do you know what? I actually think that's a fight Conor slightly be interested in because he was scheduled to fight him at 196 for the 55 belt. And then Conor has said, and we heard the rumours at the time, that his comeback fight was going. Was it the one before? When he fought Khabib, we heard that fight was going to be for against.
It was all but signed.
It was on. McGregor was in training for an interim championship fight at welterweight against RDA. So I'd imagine he feels there's a bit of unfinished business there. I don't think we'll see it anytime soon. I actually wouldn't mind seeing that fight, and I think McGregor would be up for it. Yeah.
I think that's a good point. I thought, like, absolutely not. What's the point? But the way McGregor thinks, the fact that they went through that whole
he
build
does mention RDA now and again as well. Like.
He does. And the fact they went through that whole build-up to the press conferences and all, I'd say he'd be looking at that saying, I wouldn't mind that scrap.
Yeah, there's a little bit of there must be a little bit of pent-up energy there, as in didn't get fucking get in the cage against him. I think that's the whole...
I wouldn't like to see it next, but...
Yeah, I've no interest in seeing it in the next 3 fights.
Yeah,
like,
but
so.
yeah.
Yeah. Wouldn't have an issue with it.
Yeah. Just Me asked, why is Conor competing at 170 if his goal is Khabib at 155? Cabinet Talk and Justin, who was a 155er. Unfortunately, we learned nothing about Conor's gas, and then he kind of wasn't questioned then. But yeah, why is Conor fighting at 170, Sean?
Because Conor gets to decide what he wants and when he wants it, is why. Because Conor wants the 155 belt, so he says, fuck it, I'll fight the same 155ers at 170, and then when you put a belt on the line, I'll cut some weight.
Yeah, and it's also, Conor doesn't have to fight at this stage. I'm not saying it's right, but he doesn't have to fight at 155 to get a title fight at 155. So they have to
give him some stuff.
Yeah, but maybe to make an argument to get a 170-pound title, he has to fight at 170, although probably not, but, you know.
No. Well, he didn't fight at 155 before he got a title shot.
Yeah. Ross Geller, the good man, asked, do you really think Conor will be back by the summer? John said he wants Justin Gaethje and Conor at 170. It's bizarre, yeah, but back by the summer, I think so.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if we didn't see him fight again before June.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah. Sam Oakley, if you had the final say on picking the fights of all the possibilities coming out of UFC 246, what fights would you make? He went with Conor Jorge, Usman fighting the winner of Woodley Edwards, and then Khabib can fight Gaethje after Tony. So how would you go? Conor next?
Conor and Masvidal next.
Yeah.
With regards to Usman. If Conor and Masvidal fight, the winner of that's going to fight Usman next.
Is that your pick, is it?
Yeah. If Conor and Masvidal fight, the winner of that fights Usman next.
Yeah.
The winner of Edwards and Woodley gets fucked.
Yeah, yeah.
And then what was the other one? Khabib
fights.
Fuck no. Do you know what? The UFC are just pulling matches out of their arse. Like.
Yeah, they are.
Who's the
Khabib fights Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, who's the flavour of the week this week? He's getting the fight.
Yeah.
Khabib. No, I did predict Justin Gaethje to get a title shot this year.
You did actually, yes. Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, Khabib and Gaethje.
Say it. There you go.
There we go.
I will agree with you.
Go on. Yeah. Good stuff.
Jesse Mago, this is actually, you spoke about this with Chuck. Did you hear Bob Arum wants to put McGregor versus Terence Bud Crawford in MMA and a boxing match?
No.
Did you ever see it? I know, it's terrible.
No.
I'm not even talking about it. Sorry, I'm not talking about it.
Yeah.
No. We did see it, and yeah, no interest. I just think it's funny that years ago Bob Arum was talking to Ariel Helwani, and he was talking about how MMA was just a bunch of skinheads and they couldn't fight and all this.
Then he's seen a fucking pound note in it. That's all he's seen.
Exactly. Now he's seeing some money, and he's like, actually, let me get a bit of that.
Yeah. Bob Arum doesn't do as much as he used to. He's kind of just, everyone knows who he is, and he's just a figure. So
who's he promoting now?
He's Top Rank, so they're his company. So they have like Vasily Lomachenko, they have Crawford.
So they have some guys. Like.
They have Andy Ruiz. No, sorry, they don't have Andy Ruiz. They have.
Did I hear Andy Ruiz?
They have Tyson Fury.
Oh yeah, Top Rank.
They have Tyson Fury.
Did I hear that Andy Ruiz was like offered a contract from what's his face?
Dillian White.
No, offered a contract to go with Matchroom.
Probably was, yeah. I think so. They're looking to do something.
Yeah.
I think he'll probably sign with. Well, he's with PBC at the minute. He's with Al Haymon, but
yeah,
they'll do a fight with Matchroom, I'd say. Yeah, they're looking to match him with Dillian White.
So that was it. Lots of questions. As I said, ask us questions on our community tab on YouTube if you can. If you're listening on audio, come on to our YouTube tab on the community tab on our channel. Subscribe, hit the bell, and hit the like button on this video. And yeah, thanks to Chuck for coming on. That was fun as always. And Sean, thanks for coming back.